There are moments in life when a single goodbye feels like it shattered everything you believed in. A relationship ends, someone you trusted walks away, and suddenly you are left with questions that echo in your mind day and night. You wonder what went wrong. You wonder if you were enough. You wonder if you were enough. You wonder if the person who left will ever realize the value of what they lost. But what if the real story was never about making someone come back? What if the real story is about discovering a power within you that heartbreak tried to hide? Welcome to this channel, a place where faith meets real life, where broken moments turn into powerful lessons, and where we learn how to rise stronger through spiritual wisdom, personal growth, and the truth found in Scripture. Here we talk about relationships, purpose, spiritual warfare, jealousy, destiny, and the journey of becoming the person you were created to be. This is not just motivation. This is transformation. If you have ever loved deeply, if you have ever been rejected, if you have ever been rejected, if you have ever felt like someone walked away from your life without realizing your worth, then this message is for you. Then this message is for you. Because sometimes the greatest comeback is not chasing someone who left. The greatest comeback is becoming the person they never expected you to become. And in today's message, you are going to discover a powerful truth. When you stop begging for attention and start walking in your purpose, something begins to shift. Your confidence returns, your peace grows stronger, and the same person who thought they could replace you may one day realize that what they lost was something rare. One day realize that what they lost was something rare. So stay with me. Open your heart and listen closely, because what you are about to hear may change the way you see rejection, relationships, and your own value forever. There are moments in life when the silence after a broken relationship feels louder than thunder. You wake up in the morning and the absence of someone you once loved sits heavy on your chest. Heavy on your chest. The memories echo through your mind, the conversations, the laughter, the dreams you built together. And when that person walks away, especially when they seem to move on with someone else, the pain can feel unbearable. But there is a powerful truth many people never learn, and it is this: your greatest power is not in chasing someone who left you, but in becoming the person you were created to be. Too many people believe that love must be chased, begged for, or manipulated. But love that must be forced will never be sustained. Scripture reminds us in Proverbs 4:23, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Your heart is not something to throw at people hoping they will catch it. Your heart is a sacred place. And when you understand your value, you stop running after people who cannot recognize what you carry. When someone walks away, many people panic. They begin to text more, call more, plead more, trying to convince the other person to return. But desperation does not create attraction. It weakens your position. The moment you start begging for someone's attention, you communicate something very dangerous. You communicate that your value depends on their approval. But your value was established long before they ever met you. The moment you realize that your worth was designed by heaven, something begins to shift inside you. You stop seeing yourself as someone who was rejected, and you stop seeing yourself as someone who was redirected. And you begin to see yourself as someone who was redirected. Sometimes people leave not because you were not enough, but because your future cannot accommodate their character. There are relationships that feel like destiny, but were only assignments for a season. Ecclesiastes 3. One declares that there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. Some people enter your life for a season, and when their season ends, they must go. The pain is real, but the purpose behind it is even greater. Now listen carefully, because this is where transformation begins. The greatest mistake people make after heartbreak is trying to win someone back by proving they can change for them. They begin adjusting their personality, their values, their dreams, hoping that if they become more acceptable, the other person will return. But you were not created to become smaller for someone else's comfort. You were created to grow into your full purpose. When you begin focusing on becoming who you were meant to be, something powerful happens. Your energy changes. Your posture changes. Your confidence returns. And suddenly the same person who walked away begins to notice the transformation. But understand this clearly. The goal is not to make them jealous. The goal is not to make them jealous. The goal is not revenge. The goal is restoration of your identity. Isaiah 40:31 says, "Those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles." Waiting is not weakness. Waiting is a process of renewal. While others are chasing people, you are rebuilding yourself. The truth is that many people leave because they believe they can find something better. They believe the grass is greener somewhere else. But what they often discover is that the grass is greener where it is watered. Where it is watered. And when they see you watering your own life, growing, developing, becoming stronger, they begin to realize what they walked away from. But here is the secret that most people never understand. The power that makes someone reconsider you is not your words. It is your transformation. You do not argue someone into loving you. You become the kind of person they cannot ignore. There is a quiet strength that emerges when a person refuses to collapse after heartbreak. Instead of falling apart, you rise. Instead of falling apart, you rise. Instead of bitterness, you develop wisdom. Instead of chasing, you walk in peace. And people notice peace. The world is full of chaos, drama, and emotional instability. The world is full of chaos, drama, and emotional instability. When someone sees a person who carries peace, it becomes magnetic. Proverbs 31:25 speaks about a person who is clothed with strength and dignity. That kind of presence cannot be faked. It is cultivated through discipline, prayer, reflection, and growth. So instead of asking how to get him back, ask a more powerful question. How can I become the best version of the person I was created to be? Start rebuilding your life piece by piece. Invest in your mind. Read more. Learn more. Grow spiritually. Spend time in prayer. Strengthen your character. Develop your skills. Spend time in prayer. Strengthen your character. Develop your skills. Surround yourself with people who uplift you rather than people who constantly remind you of the past. When you begin living this way, something remarkable happens. When you begin living this way, something remarkable happens. Your focus shifts from the person who left to the future that is waiting. And here is what many people experience. The person who left begins. The person who left begins. Watching from a distance. At first it is curiosity. They notice that you are no longer chasing them. They notice that you are no longer reacting emotionally. The silence confuses them. Human nature often takes presence for granted, but becomes curious about absence. When someone expected you to keep chasing them, and suddenly you stop, they begin to question their decision. Not because you beg them to return, but because you demonstrate strength. But remember this clearly. The strength must be genuine. You cannot pretend to move on while secretly living in emotional attachment. Real transformation happens inside first. Psalm 37:4 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." When your heart begins aligning with purpose instead of desperation, your entire life begins to move in a new direction. The person who once felt distant may begin reaching out again. They may send a message. They may ask how you have been. They may begin trying to re-enter the space they once abandoned. And sometimes this happens even when they are involved with someone else, because the human heart recognizes authenticity. They see the growth, the peace, the strength that was not visible before. But at that moment, you must remember something important. The goal was never to make someone beg you to return. The goal was to reclaim your identity, because the moment someone walks away from your life, you are given a choice. The goal was to reclaim your life. You are given a choice. You can spend your energy trying to convince them of your value, or you can invest your energy in becoming someone whose value speaks for itself. When Joseph was betrayed and abandoned by his brothers, he could have spent years seeking revenge or approval. But instead, he focused on the path placed before him. And in time, the very people who rejected him stood before him again, recognizing the transformation that had taken place. Genesis 50:20 reminds us that what others meant for harm can be turned for good. Pain can either break you or build you. Heartbreak can either make you bitter or make you wiser. The difference lies in how you respond. When someone leaves, do not collapse. Stand up. When someone replaces you, do not compete. Improve. When someone doubts you, do not argue. Grow. Because growth has a voice louder than any explanation. And there is a quiet moment that often comes when the person who walked away begins realizing the weight of their decision. They remember the loyalty you gave, the kindness you showed, the support you offered. They begin comparing what they have now with what they lost. But by that time, something inside you has already changed. You are no longer the person who depended on their presence to feel complete. You have discovered a deeper strength, a deeper confidence, a deeper sense of identity that cannot be shaken by someone's decision to leave. And when a person finally returns saying they miss you, saying they made a mistake, saying they want another chance, the most powerful position you can stand in is not anger, not pride, but clarity. Clarity about who you are. Clarity about what you deserve. Clarity about the kind of love that honors your worth. Clarity about the kind of love that honors your worth. Because when you understand your value, you stop accepting relationships that require you to shrink, beg, or chase. You begin walking in a quiet authority that comes from knowing you were created with purpose. Jeremiah 29:11 reminds us that there are plans for your life, plans for peace, and a future filled with hope. And when a person aligns their life with purpose instead of emotional desperation, their entire presence begins to change. People notice the same person who once ignored your messages may now be the one waiting for your reply. The same person who once walked away may now be the one hoping for another chance. But the real transformation is not that they want you back. The real transformation is that you have become someone who no longer needs validation to recognize your worth. And as you continue walking forward with faith, discipline, and purpose, something even deeper begins to unfold inside you. Because the journey of becoming your best self does not stop at healing from heartbreak. It begins opening doors you never expected. It begins revealing strengths you never realized you had. It begins teaching you lessons about love, loyalty, patience, and wisdom that can only be learned through experience, and wisdom that can only be learned through experience. And somewhere along this journey, you begin to understand that the pain you once cried over was actually shaping you into someone stronger than you were before. And when that realization fully settles in your heart, the way you see relationships, rejection, and your own identity will never be the same again. And your own identity will never be the same again. And when that realization begins to settle deep within your spirit, something quiet but powerful begins to change inside you. The person who once measured their worth by someone else's attention begins to see life through a completely different lens. You start recognizing that the pain you experienced was not simply loss, it was preparation. It was a refining process. It was shaping your character in ways comfort never could. Many people want restoration without transformation. They want the relationship back, but they do not want to grow. They want the person to return, but they remain the same person emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. But lasting change never happens without inner development. Romans 5:3-4 tells us something profound. It says that suffering produces perseverance, 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 perseverance. Character is built through endurance. Strength is. Character is built through endurance. Strength is developed through pressure. And hope emerges when you realize that what you survive did not destroy you. This is why the strongest people you will ever meet are often those who have walked through seasons of rejection. They have learned how to stand when others walked away. They have learned how to rebuild when life collapsed around them. So when someone leads your life, it does not mean your story is over. In many cases, it means your story is just beginning. There's a quiet power in a person who has learned how to stand alone with faith. He's learned how to stand alone with faith. When you begin to anchor your life in spiritual growth, something remarkable happens. You become emotionally stable in a world full of emotional storms. Psalm 46, one says that God is a refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. When you begin drawing strength from that truth, your emotional foundation becomes stronger than temporary relationships. Your emotional foundation becomes stronger than temporary relationships. You stop depending on people to carry responsibilities they were never meant to carry. People were never meant to be the source of your identity. They were meant to be companions in your journey, not the foundation of your worth. When someone becomes the center of your identity, their absence feels like the collapse of your world. When someone becomes the center of your world, but when your identity is rooted in purpose, their absence becomes simply a change in direction. That is why growth after heartbreak is so important. It forces you to rebuild your life on stronger foundations. Think about the way gold is purified. Gold is placed under intense heat so that impurities can rise to the surface and be removed. Without the heat, the gold would remain mixed with elements that weaken its value. Life works the same way. Difficult seasons reveal parts of our character that need refinement. They expose insecurities we did not know were controlling our decisions. They reveal how much of our confidence was dependent on people's approval. But when you walk through the fire and refuse to become bitter, something beautiful begins to emerge from that process. Your patience becomes stronger. Your discernment becomes sharper. Your standards become clearer. And suddenly you begin noticing things you once ignored. You recognize patterns in people's behavior. You recognize patterns in people's behavior. You recognize warning signs you once overlooked because emotions were louder than wisdom. Proverbs 3:5-6 reminds us to trust in the Lord with all our heart and lean not on our own understanding. Many times our understanding is clouded by emotion. We convince ourselves that certain relationships are meant to last forever, even when the signs around us show that they are unstable. Sometimes a relationship ends not because love disappeared, but because wisdom needed to intervene. There are moments when a person must walk away so that both individuals can grow into the people they were meant to become. And here is a truth that many people do not realize until later in life. Until later in life, when someone leaves and you focus on developing yourself instead of chasing them, you create space for something greater. Growth attracts opportunity. Peace attracts clarity. Discipline attracts respect. People are drawn to individuals who carry purpose in their lives. When someone begins living intentionally, others begin noticing the difference. There is a calm confidence in their presence. They no longer speak from insecurity. They speak from experience. They no longer react emotionally to every situation. They respond with wisdom. James 1:5 says that if anyone lacks wisdom, they should ask for it, and it will be given generously. Wisdom is one of the greatest gifts that can emerge from painful experiences. Because once you gain wisdom, you stop repeating cycles that once controlled your life. You stop tolerating disrespect. This love, Yui. Stop confusing attention with commitment. You stop accepting confusion when clarity should be present. Real love does not create constant uncertainty. Real love does not require manipulation to survive. Real love operates with honesty, stability, and respect. And when a person has spent time rebuilding their life, they begin recognizing that their time and emotional energy are valuable resources. You stop giving unlimited access to people who show limited commitment. You stop investing deeply in people who are uncertain about your place in their life. You begin protecting your peace the same way a gardener protects their garden. A gardener does not simply plant seeds and walk away. They remove weeds, they water the soil, they create conditions for healthy growth. Your life requires the same level of care. When you remove toxic influences, your mind becomes clearer. When you spend time in prayer and reflection, your heart becomes calmer. And reflection, your heart becomes calmer. When you develop discipline in your daily habits, your confidence begins to grow. And slowly but surely, you become a completely different person than the one who once felt shattered by someone's departure. But here is the part that surprises many people. As you grow stronger, the same person who once walked away may begin feeling drawn back toward your life. They may begin remembering the stability you offered. They may begin noticing the strength you now carry. Sometimes they reach out directly. Other times they observe quietly from a distance. But when they see that you did not collapse after they left, their perception of you begins to change. People often underestimate what they had until they see the person thriving without them. Yet by this time, your perspective has already shifted. You are no longer looking at life through the same emotional lens. You understand now that a relationship must add peace to why. Our life, not confusion. You understand that loyalty is demonstrated through actions, not promises. You understand that love must be protected by character. 1 Corinthians 13 describes love as patient, kind, not proud, not selfish, not easily angered. That description is not simply poetic language. It is a blueprint for what healthy love should look like. If a relationship consistently contradicts those principles, it reveals something important about the foundation of that connection. Growth teaches you how to recognize those differences. And something else begins happening as you grow. Your relationship with faith deepens. During the quiet nights when your heart felt broken, you may have spent time in prayer asking for strength, asking for understanding, asking for healing. Those moments often become the foundation of spiritual growth. Because when you reach a place where you have nothing left but faith, you discover how powerful faith truly is. Psalm 34:18 says that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Those words carry deep comfort because they remind us that painful seasons do not go unnoticed. They are seen, they are understood, and they can be transformed into something meaningful. When a person begins walking through life with that awareness, their priorities begin to shift. They stop rushing into relationships simply to avoid loneliness. Their priorities begin to avoid loneliness. They stop compromising their values just to keep someone interested. They begin seeking connections that align with their purpose, their faith, and their vision for the future. And that kind of maturity creates a presence that is difficult to ignore. People respect individuals who respect themselves. They trust individuals who demonstrate consistency. They admire individuals who remain kind even after experiencing disappointment. Kindness after pain is 1-0. The most powerful indicators of character. Anyone can be kind when life is easy, but kindness that survives betrayal, rejection, and heartbreak reveals a depth of strength that cannot be taught in comfort. It is built through experience. And when someone who once left begins seeing that strength in you, they may begin questioning their decision. They may realize that what they walked away from was not ordinary. They may begin feeling the weight of what they lost. But by this time, your journey has already taken you far beyond the place where you once stood, waiting for them. You have grown. You have healed. You have developed new dreams and new goals. You have discovered talents and abilities that may have remained hidden if you had stayed in the same emotional place. Sometimes the greatest growth in life begins with a goodbye you never expected, because that goodbye forces you to confront parts of yourself you might have ignored. It pushes you to confront parts of yourself you might have ignored. It pushes you to strengthen your faith. It challenges you to become someone stronger than the version of yourself that once depended on another person's presence to feel complete. 2 Corinthians 4:8-9 describes the resilience of the human spirit in powerful words. It says that we are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, struck down, but not destroyed. Those words describe the journey of anyone who has survived heartbreak and emerged stronger. Those words describe the journey of anyone who has survived heartbreak and emerged stronger. You may have felt pressed by emotional pain. You may have felt confused by the sudden change in your life. You You may have felt knocked down by the realization that someone you trusted walked away, but you were not destroyed. You stood back up. You rebuilt your life piece by piece. You allowed your faith to guide you through uncertainty, and that journey creates a level of maturity that many people never reach, because some people spend their entire lives trying to avoid pain. But those who face pain with courage discover that it can transform them into wiser, stronger, and more compassionate individuals. And as you continue moving forward with this new understanding, you begin to realize something deeply liberating. Your future was never dependent on the person who left. Your purpose was never limited by someone else's decision. Your life still holds opportunities, connections, and experiences that are waiting for you beyond the pain you once believed would define your story. And when you reach that level of clarity, your presence carries a calm authority. Your presence carries a calm authority. You speak differently, you move through life with greater awareness. And whether the person who once left eventually returns or not becomes far less important than the person you have become along the way. And when a person reaches that place in life where their identity is no longer fragile, where their peace is no longer controlled by someone else's presence, they begin to move through the world with a different spirit. It is a quiet confidence, not arrogance, not pride, but a calm assurance that comes from understanding who they are and why they are here. Most people never experience this level of freedom because they spend their lives trying to hold on to people who were never meant to stay. They cling to memories, to emotions, to promises that were spoken in moments, but never supported by actions. But when you begin releasing what you cannot control, you create space for what was meant for you. Ecclesiastes 7:8 says that the end of a matter is better than its beginning, and patience is better than pride. Sometimes the ending of a relationship is the beginning of your true growth. Sometimes the ending of a relationship is the beginning of your true growth. In the beginning, you may not understand it. Your heart feels confused. Your mind replays. Very conversation. Every moment trying to understand what went wrong. But as time passes and you continue walking forward, clarity begins to replace confusion. You start noticing things you once ignored. You remember conversations where respect was missing. You recall moments when your intuition quietly warned you that something was not right. But emotions often silence wisdom when we are deeply attached to someone. Time has a way of revealing truth. And when the truth becomes clear, you begin to appreciate the lessons hidden inside the pain. You begin realizing that love must be protected by boundaries. Love without boundaries becomes sacrifice without respect. Proverbs 4:26 advises us to give careful thought to the paths for our feet and to be steadfast in all our ways. That wisdom applies not only to decisions about our future, but also to the people we allow to walk beside us. Because not everyone who enters your life has the capacity to honor your value. Some people are drawn to your kindness but do not understand how to protect it. Some people are attracted to your loyalty but are not prepared to reciprocate it. And when those individuals leave, it may feel like loss in the moment, but in time it reveals itself as protection. There is something powerful about being protected from a future that would have solely drained your spirit. Sometimes the greatest blessing is the door that closes before you walk too far down the wrong path. Psalm 37:27-23 says that the steps of a good person are ordered. Even the painful steps can be part of a larger direction that you cannot yet see. When you trust that your journey has purpose, you stop trying to force things that were not meant to stay. Instead of fighting against the change, you begin learning from it, and learning transforms your perspective. You begin recognizing the importance of emotional maturity in Ra. Relationships, attraction may bring two people together, but maturity is what allows them to remain together. Without maturity, small misunderstandings become large conflicts. Without maturity, pride replaces humility. Without maturity, communication collapses and assumptions begin controlling the relationship. Many relationships fail not because love was absent, but because wisdom was missing. That is why your growth during this season is so important. It prepares you to recognize the difference between temporary emotions and lasting character. When you grow, your standards grow with you. You begin seeking someone who respects your peace rather than someone who constantly disrupts it. You begin valuing honesty more than charm. You begin recognizing that stability is more attractive than unpredictability. And as you develop these qualities within yourself, something interesting begins to happen. You begin attracting people who are also growing. Your environment starts changing. Your conversations become deeper. Your goals become clearer. The kind of people you once entertained may no longer feel compatible with the direction your life is moving. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. This is alignment. Amos 3 asks a powerful question. Can two walk together unless they are agreed? Agreement in this context is not simply about liking the same things. It is about sharing values, direction, and commitment to growth. Two people may feel strong emotions toward each other, but if their values and priorities are different, the relationship will constantly struggle to find balance. That is why growth often creates distance between you and certain people from your past. As you develop wisdom, you begin noticing the difference between love that builds and love that drains. Love that builds encourages your growth. Love that builds encourages your growth. Love that builds respects your boundaries. Love that builds celebrates your progress rather than feeling threatened by it. But love that drains creates constant tension. It demands attention but offers little stability in return. And once you have experienced peace through personal growth, you become very careful about allowing chaos back into your life. Galatians 6:9 reminds us not to grow weary in doing good, because in due time we will reap if we do not give up. This principle applies not only to our spiritual life, but also to our emotional journey. Healing takes time. Growth takes patience. Transformation requires consistency. There will be moments when you feel strong and confident, and there may also be moments when memories attempt to pull you back into old emotions. That is normal. The human heart carries deep attachments, but each time you choose growth, instead of returning to old patterns, you strengthen your character. Each time you choose peace, instead of reacting emotionally, you develop maturity. Each time you choose faith instead of fear, your spirit becomes stronger. And with each step forward, the person you're becoming begins to shine more clearly. Sometimes a person who once walked away eventually sees this transformation and wonders how the change happened. They remember the person who once chased them, who once tried desperately to keep the relationship alive. And now they see someone calm, focused, and purposeful. It can surprise them because people often expect others to remain the same. They assume that the version of you they once knew will always exist in that same place emotionally. But growth changes everything. Growth changes how you see yourself. Growth changes how you see others. Growth changes how you see others. Growth changes what you are willing to accept. 2 Timothy 1:7 tells us that we have not been given a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and self-discipline. Self-discipline is one of the most powerful qualities a person can develop after heartbreak. It allows you to resist the temptation of returning to situations that once caused you pain. It gives you the strength to maintain boundaries even when emotions try to weaken your resolve. It helps you remain focused on the life you're building instead of the past you have already survived. You have already survived. And discipline in your daily life begins creating stability. You start forming healthy routines. You start forming healthy routines. You begin investing in your physical health, your spiritual life, and your personal goals. You start building a future that does not depend on someone else's presence to feel meaningful. And the more you focus on building that life, the less power your past begins to hold over your emotions. You realize that the chapter you once thought defined your entire story was actually only one page in a much larger journey. Your story continues, your purpose continues, your potential continues. Your potential continues. Jeremiah 17 7 speaks about the person who trusts in the Lord and whose confidence is rooted in faith. That person is compared to a tree planted by water, sending out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes, and its leaves remain green. Comes, and its leaves remain green. That image describes stability. When your life is rooted in faith, difficult seasons may come, but they do not destroy you. Instead, they deepen your roots. They strengthen your resilience. They prepare you to stand firm when challenges arise again in the future. And this stability becomes visible to others. People begin seeing that your peace is not temporary. Your confidence is not based on external validation. Your kindness is not dependent on being treated perfectly. You continue living with integrity because integrity has become part of your character. And character is one of the most attractive qualities a person can possess because character cannot be faked for long. Character reveals itself through consistency. It reveals itself through the way you treat people when no one is watching. It reveals itself through your patience during difficult moments. When someone who once walked away sees that kind of transformation, they may feel something they did not expect. They may feel respect. They may feel respect. They may feel respect. They may feel admiration. They may feel regret for not recognizing your value when they had the opportunity. But by the time those realizations appear, your life has already begun moving in new directions. You have learned that your happiness does not depend on convincing someone to stay. You have learned that love must be mutual to be meaningful. You have learned that the strongest relationships are built not on emotional intensity alone, but on trust, communication, and shared purpose. And when you understand those truths, your approach to relationships becomes wiser. You no longer rush. You observe, you listen. You listen. You pay attention to actions instead of being distracted by words. You recognize that consistency reveals more about a person's intentions than promises ever could. Matthew 7:16 teaches that we recognize people by their fruits. In other words, their actions reveal their true nature. Their actions reveal their true nature. This understanding protects your heart in the future because once you learn how to recognize genuine character, you stop being easily deceived by appearances. But you become patient enough to allow people to reveal who they truly are. And that patience becomes a form of wisdom. As you continue growing in this wisdom, the life you build becomes stronger and more stable. Your friendships become more meaningful. Your goals become more focused. Your spiritual life becomes deeper. You begin experiencing a sense of peace that once felt impossible during the days when your heart was broken. And sometimes, during a quiet moment, you look back, cheek at the pain you once cried over and realize something remarkable. The very experience that once felt like the end of your happiness was actually guiding you toward a stronger version of yourself. It was teaching you lessons about love, faith, patience, and identity that could not have been learned any other way. And the person you have become through that process carries a strength that cannot easily be shaken again. And when that strength becomes part of your character, you begin to understand something that many people never discover until much later in life. Pain can be one of the greatest teachers if you allow it to shape you instead of hardening your heart. The experience that once felt like rejection begins to reveal itself as preparation. What you thought was the end was actually the beginning of a deeper awareness about yourself, about relationships, and about the kind of life you are meant to build. Many people move through life repeating the same emotional cycles because they never stop to learn from their past. They rush from one relationship to another, hoping the next one will heal the wounds of the previous one. But wounds that are ignored do not disappear. They simply hide beneath the surface and eventually influence future decisions. True healing begins when you take time to understand what happened. Not to blame yourself or the other person, but to gain wisdom. Wisdom transforms pain into knowledge. Wisdom allows you to recognize the patterns that once trapped you. Wisdom helps you grow into someone who no longer reacts out of insecurity, but responds with maturity. James 1:2-4 teaches that trials test our faith and produce perseverance, and perseverance finishes its work so that we may become mature and complete. Maturity is not something that appears suddenly. It develops through experiences that challenge your patience, your humility, and through experiences that challenge your patience, your humility, your ability to trust even when life feels uncertain. During the quiet moments after heartbreak, many people discover parts of themselves they never noticed before. You begin reflecting on your habits, your priorities, your boundaries. You start asking deeper questions about what kind of life you truly want. Do you want a relationship built on emotional dependency? Or do you want one built on mutual strength? Do you want someone who appears during convenient moments? Or someone who stands beside you with loyalty and consistency? Do you want temporary attention or lasting commitment? These questions are important because the answers shape the standards you set for your future. Standards are not about pride. They're about protection. They protect your time, your peace, and your emotional well-being. When you do not have clear standards, you may accept behavior that slowly erodes your confidence. You may tolerate situations that leave you feeling confused, neglected, or undervalued. But once you begin valuing yourself properly, your tolerance for disrespect begins to disappear. Proverbs 22:1 reminds us that a good name is more desirable than great riches. Character and integrity hold more value than temporary pleasure or excitement. This truth becomes clearer as you grow. You begin noticing that some people are skilled at creating emotional intensity, but struggle to provide stability. For lay stability, they know how to make you feel important for a moment, but they lack the consistency required to sustain a meaningful relationship, and that is where wisdom becomes essential. That is where wisdom becomes essential. Wisdom teaches you that consistency reveals true intentions. Anyone can say beautiful words, but only consistent actions demonstrate genuine commitment. When you learn to observe actions instead of being captivated by promises, you protect yourself from many unnecessary disappointments. This awareness check changes the way you approach relationships. You become patient. You allow time to reveal a person's character. You pay attention to how they treat others, how they handle responsibility, how they respond during moments of stress. Because real character is revealed when circumstances are not perfect. And the more you grow, the more you realize that love is not simply about feelings. Feelings are important, but they are not the foundation of a lasting relationship. Love is sustained by values. It is sustained by respect. It is sustained by honesty and commitment. 1 Corinthians 13 describes love as patient and kind, not jealous, not boastful, not rude, not self-seeking. These qualities create an environment where trust can flourish. Without those qualities, even the strongest attraction eventually fades. And when you look back at your past relationship through the lens of growth, you may begin seeing things more clearly. You may realize that certain behaviors were warning signs you ignored because your emotions were deeply involved. You may remember moments when communication broke down, when trust was weakened, when respect was not consistently present. At the time, you may have tried to overlook those issues because you believed love alone would solve them. But love without wisdom often leads to disappointment. This is why a season of growth is so valuable. It equips you with discernment. Discernment allows you to recognize the difference between a genuine connection and a temporary attachment. And discernment protects your heart from repeating painful patterns. Discernment protects your heart from repeating painful patterns. Discernment helps you recognize when someone is truly aligned with your values and when they are simply drawn to the comfort you provide. Hebrews 12:11 says that discipline seems painful at the time, but later produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Now, growth requires discipline. It requires the discipline to control your thoughts when memories attempt to pull you back into sadness. It requires the discipline to maintain healthy habits, even when motivation is low. It requires the discipline to remain patient while your life continues unfolding. But discipline produces something beautiful. It produces stability. And stability becomes the foundation of confidence. When you know that you can rely on your own strength, your own faith, your own commitment to growth, you stop fearing loneliness. You realize that your life does not lose value simply because one person walked away. Instead, you begin appreciating the freedom that comes from standing firmly in your identity. You start pursuing goals that once seemed distant. You develop talents that may have been neglected. You deepen your relationship with faith and learn how to trust in guidance greater than your own understanding. Capital Proverbs 16:9 says that a person may plan their way, but their steps are directed. Sometimes the direction we are given includes unexpected detours. Sometimes the direction we are given includes unexpected detours. Those detours may feel painful in the moment, but they often guide us toward opportunities we would never have discovered otherwise, for the 500 otherwise. Many people can look back on their lives and see that the moments they once feared were actually the moments that shaped their future. A broken relationship may lead you to focus on your personal development. A difficult season may encourage you to strengthen your spiritual life. A painful goodbye may open the door to friendships and experiences that transform your perspective. Life has a way of weaving purpose into situations that once appeared meaningless. And when you begin trusting that your journey is guided by purpose, your fear of loss begins to fade. You understand that what is meant to remain in your life will remain. And what leaves A be creating space for something better. Romans 8:28 speaks about all things working together for good, for those who love and walk according to purpose. Working to purpose. This does not mean every experience feels good in the moment. It means that even painful events can contribute to a greater outcome. That understanding gives you peace. It allows you to move forward without carrying resentment. It allows you to release bitterness that could otherwise poison your heart. Forgiveness becomes part of your healing. Forgiveness does not mean you excuse harmful behavior. It means you refuse to carry the burden of anger forever. It means you refuse to carry the burden of anger forever. Holding on to anger keeps you emotionally tied to the past. Releasing it frees you to focus on your future. Ephesians 4:31 encourages us to let go of bitterness, rage, and resentment. These emotions can quietly drain your energy and distract you from the life you are building. When you release them, your mind becomes clearer. Your spirit becomes lighter. You regain the emotional space necessary to grow. And as time passes, the person you once were begins to feel distant. The version of you who cried through sleepless nights, who questioned their worth, who wondered why someone left, gradually transforms into someone stronger and wiser. You begin noticing how much you have changed. Your reactions are calmer. Your thoughts are more balanced. Your faith is deeper. And when you encounter new relationships, you approach them with awareness rather than desperation. You understand that companionship is a gift, but it should never replace your identity. Your identity must remain rooted in something stronger than human approval. When that foundation is secure, you become capable of loving without losing yourself. You become capable of caring deeply without sacrificing your dignity. You become capable of walking away from situations that threaten your peace. You become capable of walking away from situations that threaten your peace. That level of emotional strength is rare, but it is the natural result of growth, reflection, and faith. And once you reach that point, something interesting begins to happen. You stop trying to prove your worth to others. You stop chasing validation. You stop explaining yourself to people who have already decided not to understand you. Instead, you focus on living with integrity. And you focus on living with integrity. You focus on building a life that reflects your values. You focus on becoming someone who contributes kindness, wisdom, and strength to the world around you. And the more you live this way, the more your presence begins to inspire respect. People recognize authenticity. They recognize when someone has endured challenges and emerged with compassion instead of bitterness. They recognize when someone carries peace, even after experiencing disappointment. Matthew 5:16 encourages us to let our light shine before others so that they may see good works. Your growth becomes part of that light. Your transformation becomes an example of resilience. Your ability to rise after heartbreak demonstrates the power of faith and perseverance. And merciless, and through that journey, you become someone who understands that the true victory was never about making someone regret losing you. The true victory was discovering the strength within yourself that you did not know existed. The true victory was learning how to stand firm in your identity, even when circumstances tried to shake your confidence. The true victory was realizing that your future holds far more possibilities than the chapter that once brought you pain. And as you continue walking forward with that awareness, your life begins unfolding in ways that once seemed impossible, during the days when your heart was still healing. So when you look back at everything you have walked through, you begin to see that the story was never truly about. You begin to see that the story was never truly about losing someone. It was about finding yourself. It was about discovering the strength inside you that comfort could never reveal. The nights you cried, the moments you questioned your worth, the silence that once felt unbearable. Those were not signs that your life was falling apart. They were signs that something inside you was being rebuilt. You learned that love should never require you to abandon your dignity. You learned that your peace is too valuable to trade for temporary attention. You learned that your heart deserves a place where loyalty, respect, and honesty are not rare gifts, but daily commitments. And most importantly, you learned that your identity was never meant to be dependent on someone else's decision to stay or leave. When a person finally understands their worth, something powerful happens. They stop chasing what does not choose them. They stop begging for the attention that should have been freely given. Instead, they begin walking forward with quiet confidence, knowing that the right people will recognize their value without persuasion. And sometimes, the one who walked away will notice the change. They may see the strength in your spirit, the peace in your presence, the growth in your life. They may realize that what they left behind was rare. But by then, something greater has already taken place inside you. You have grown beyond the place where you once waited for their validation. Because the greatest transformation was not that someone might come back. The greatest transformation was that you discovered who you truly are. A person who stands with faith when life is uncertain. A person who chooses growth over bitterness. A person who carries dignity, even after disappointment. A person who understands that every painful season can produce wisdom, strength, and purpose. And when you walk through life with that understanding, your future no longer looks like something fragile that can be broken by another person's choice. It looks like a path filled with possibility, guided by faith, shaped by discipline, and strengthened by everything you survived. So keep walking forward. Keep growing. Keep protecting your peace and honoring your worth. Because the life being prepared for you is far greater than the chapter you once thought would define your story.